In a bizarre true crime story too weird to believe, FDR's son Elliott was accused of hiring a hitman to assassinate the governor of the Bahamas. But why? Anna Roosevelt was the eldest child and only daughter of President Franklin Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor. Anna became a writer and journalist, and in 1935 she married her second husband, journalist Clarence John Bodiger. The couple got their break when newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst offered them both jobs at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. Hearst made Bodiger publisher, giving him a platform to support FDR politically, even when Hearst broke with the president. But the couple was a package deal, meaning Hearst had to give Anna a job too. He had the perfect one, making her an associate editor in charge of the women's pages. That chapter of their lives ended when World War II broke out. Bodiger signed up with the U.S. military in 1942, and a year later, Anna returned to the White House. In the White House, she acted as de facto First Lady and White House hostess. Her mother was too politically active to be bothered with social functions, so Anna served in her stead. Given her role as Roosevelt's social secretary, Anna asked to accompany her father to the 1945 Yalta Conference, where he met with Joseph Stalin and Winston Churchill to decide the fate of post-war Europe. President Roosevelt, who was dying of heart disease, had the option of picking either Eleanor or Anna. For the president, the decision was easy. His marriage with Eleanor was on the rocks, particularly as rumors swirled about his affair with Lucy Mercer Rutherford, so he put Anna on the delegation to avoid bringing her mother. At Yalta, Anna's job was to make the ailing president's life as easy as possible, mostly by ensuring that social functions ran smoothly so FDR could focus on his duties without compromising his health.
Prime Minister Churchill arrived with his daughter. They were greeted by Mrs. Bodiger.
However, the conference and its aftermath resulted in friction with her mother. In 1945, President Roosevelt died. Naturally, Anna told her mother of the circumstances of the death, including a revelation that may have stung Eleanor. FDR spent his last moments with Lucy. Anna had known about the affair for years, but concealed it from her mother, who took it as a personal betrayal of sorts. Following her father's death in 1945, Anna reprised her media career, purchasing an Arizona weekly newspaper alongside her husband. They had turned it into a daily by 1947, and although there was some initial success, the venture failed, leaving the couple indebted. The venture strained the marriage, leading them to separate and eventually divorce in 1949. 3 years later, her third marriage to James Halstead saw her pivot to nonprofits and international organizations. She died in 1975 of cancer at the age of 69. James Roosevelt took a series of jobs in military service with the elite Carlson's Raiders in the Pacific during World War II before returning to the United States to pursue a political career in California. In California, James remained a Democrat, but he got himself in trouble with the party for supporting Republican Dwight Eisenhower, defending Richard Nixon, and endorsing Ronald Reagan's 1980 and 1984 presidential bids. Roosevelt justified his endorsement by claiming that Reagan was the best choice to continue Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal legacy. But in 1987, the Los Angeles Times reported that James's National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare was facing accusations of running a fundraising scam that degraded the Roosevelt name. It allegedly used scare tactics to solicit donations from the elderly who depended upon both programs. The PAC argued that both programs risked major solvency crises down the road, and the House Ways and Means Committee summoned James to testify. The incident revealed a break between James and the Reagan administration's policies. The PAC's executive director Landis Neal made it crystal clear that donors to the organization were frightened by the Reagan administration, presumably a reference to various cuts to social services. The scandal followed James until he died in 1991 at the age of 83. In 1909, the future presidential couple lived in New York City with their two children, Anna and James. That year, Eleanor Roosevelt wrote in her 1937 memoir, This Is My Story, that she gave birth to a third forgotten Roosevelt child, the first Franklin Roosevelt Jr., in March of 1909. Eleanor wrote that this child was, quote, the biggest and most beautiful of all the babies. For the first months of his life, he was mostly under the care of nurses. He seemed to be doing fine, despite his mother's worries that he would be a difficult child. But in November, he, along with his two siblings, contracted the flu. A doctor's visit confirmed that he had sustained heart damage, and the child died. Eleanor, in her memoir, regretted not having spent more time with the child and blamed herself for his death. She even wrote that at the funeral, it seemed cruel to leave him out there alone in the cold. The child was buried at the St. James Episcopal Church in Hyde Park, New York. But in December 1909, Eleanor found herself pregnant again with another son, Elliott Roosevelt. Elliott Roosevelt was known as Franklin Roosevelt's black sheep son, as he was involved in all sorts of weird hustles.
Did you ever sell Christmas trees? Yes.
Did he?
Yes.
But his shady reputation was mostly earned through involvement in various contracting scandals involving aircraft. The first scandal occurred in 1934 and dropped in the press in 1936. The younger Roosevelt had entered into an agreement with Dutch aviation company Fokker to sell military aircraft to the Soviet Union disguised as civilian planes through a shell company set up by Elliott Roosevelt. They would split the profits. A scandal brewed because the plan stank of influence peddling. Elliott had taken the deal knowing that foreign governments would be more open to working with him because he was the president's son. The president objected but did not stop him. Elliott denied any financial exchange or illegal conduct, noting that the deal collapsed before payments because the Soviets backed out. The second scandal came in 1943 when Howard Hughes tried to sell the government a new photo reconnaissance airplane. He had the support of Elliott Roosevelt, then a colonel in the Air Corps. The allegation was that the first son had once again put his thumb on the scale in a quid pro quo arrangement with Hughes. Hughes' agent John Meyer wined and dined Elliott, spending over $5,000 for him to meet beautiful women at New York's most exclusive clubs, presumably in return for getting the military to buy Hughes' plane. Roosevelt denied all wrongdoing, saying he had been abroad when Meyer's records had the meeting.
And did any of those girls who were paid, were they procured for my entertainment?
Later in life, Elliott Roosevelt faced a fresh scandal involving an alleged contract killing. On September 18, 1973, Louis Mastriani, a man previously convicted of securities frauds, testified to the Senate that Elliott Roosevelt had been part of an alleged plot to kill the governor of the Bahamas, Lyndon Pindling. The dispute at the center of the alleged plot was straight out of the world of organized crime. Pindling had allegedly reneged on a promise to give a casino license to one Mickey McLaney in return for $1 million donation. McLaney reportedly had connections to some very dangerous people, including Murder Inc. honcho Meyer Lansky. Mastriani testified that Elliott Roosevelt offered him $100,000, including $7,500 upfront in cash and a $2,500 check from McLaney to whack the Bahamian governor. Weeks later, the New York Times reported that Elliott appeared in Washington to refute the charges, calling them vicious lies, resulting in emotional, physical, and financial stress beyond endurance. He further called Mastriani's claims a hoax and demanded he be prosecuted. The evidence was inconclusive. A check made out to Mastriani was entered into congressional records, so there was no doubt that Roosevelt had associated with him. But there was no way to determine whether the money was for the alleged hit job, which Mastriani claimed was called off because it would be impossible to escape the Bahamas quickly to cover his tracks. Elliott Roosevelt died in 1990 at the age of 80. The second Franklin Roosevelt Jr. survived infancy and went on to have a distinguished military career after graduating from Harvard and the Navy ROTC program. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, he signed on to the U.S. Navy. He was posted to Europe, where he was granted no favors as the president's son and cast into the thick of the action. Roosevelt's commission brought him first to North Africa and then to Sicily in 1943. Then he was a lieutenant on the USS Mayrant, where the crew affectionately called him Big Poncho. In Sicily, he earned a Silver Star and Purple Heart for heroism during a German air raid against the Sicilian capital, Palermo. The original military citation reads that Roosevelt Jr. was decorated for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action. German bombers struck explosive munitions sitting near the docks, causing an explosion and sending shrapnel towards the Maynard. As the bombs continued to fall, the first son rushed to help two wounded crewmates, giving them first aid under fire and carrying them off the ship to safety, saving them. After Palermo, FDR Jr. was transferred to the Pacific alongside a promotion to lieutenant commander, the USS Moore destroyer to command, and a new nickname, Big Moose. He saw action in the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, earning another battery of decorations there. After the war, he represented New York in Congress on a third-party ticket and headed the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under Lyndon Johnson. He died in 1988 at the age of 74. John Roosevelt was FDR's youngest child and a bit of a political maverick. His brothers all held political office. Elliott was mayor of Miami Beach, while Franklin Jr. and James were congressmen and federal bureaucrats in the Democratic Party. John broke with family tradition on both counts. Unlike his siblings, and much to their chagrin, John was a Republican, making his party affiliation official in 1947. He also never held political office. The closest he ever came was considering a run for the mayoralty of New York City in 1957. He preferred to support candidates, lending his financial muscle and influence to Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, and most annoyingly for his family, Richard Nixon. John became a successful businessman. He died from heart failure in 1981 at the age of 65.